Hey guys, I am Marina Amdream. Thank you so much for watching. Today I am here with a local celebrity. Can you please tell them your name?
Hey everyone, my name is Edmund Davis, social historian Ed Davis.
Yes, and you are based in Little Rock, Arkansas, so thank you so much for being with us today. I am fascinated by you and what you do in the community, and I've been Googling and researching you. You're amazing. Could you please tell the viewers and us what do you do and how you can help us?
Sure, thank you. And I'm so grateful for you listeners. Again, my name is Ed Davis, and I'm a social historian, but I'm also a professor of history at Arkansas Baptist College. I've been there for about 12 plus years now, and some of the things I do in the classroom are traditional in essence. And some of the things that I've done inside of the streets or outside of the streets, if you have it, from a social activist standpoint, is also from a community investor standpoint. And so we provide educational resources. I'm a speaker like yourself, a motivational speaker, and also I speak about sensitive topics. In this case, we're talking about unburied truths, things that the news media doesn't generally cover, and so that's when the media reaches out to me. So I'm pretty much the one that gets the information that most people don't get as a historian. But I try to make it in fun, I try to engage people in some of the topics, but I always ask people to look it up for themselves, to research things for yourself, and don't just rely on just one source as a way of getting information out there.
That's right. And we actually have an announcement because you have an event tomorrow.
Yes. Tomorrow will be the first ever nationally, we believe, will be the Kobe class. It's called Mamba Mentality. Of course, we all know his book that came out 2 years ago. It's called The Mamba Mentality, How I Play. And so we're going to have a Kobe class, quote unquote, here in Little Rock, Arkansas. And of course, the Laker Nation has picked up the story. And we also let his wife, Mrs. Vanessa Bryant, know about it. And she hit like a like to it and didn't really comment, but definitely it's a free event. It's a citywide endeavor. In this part, we're going to talk about Kobe's business acumen. We're going to talk about the things he was doing in philanthropy. We're going to talk about the things that he was doing from the nonprofit side, also from a national coaching standpoint, from a global mentoring standpoint. He was doing a number of things. I won't give you all the information right now, but generally speaking, it's something that hasn't been done before, we believe. So it's called The Mamba Mentality. That's the name of his book. In our event, we're going to call it the Kobe Class. It'll be tomorrow, downtown Little Rock. And so come on down. We're all going to wear our Kobe paraphernalia or Laker paraphernalia. And also Gigi, his daughter, we're going to wear her number 2 as well. And so we're going to take a community/citywide picture and we're going to send that to his family to let them know that we are still in prayer. We're still in, in a happy/grievance period for the demise of the Laker legend, if you will. And so, of course, we want to let people know that we appreciate Kobe here in Little Rock. We appreciate what his daughter was doing, what she was going to be doing, and what Kobe will be doing in his posthumous state. Because, again, he's still mentoring me from heaven, if you will. He is still mentoring people from the blueprint for success that he's left in terms of being a philanthropist, in terms of being a civil activist, in terms of being a global ambassador of goodwill. He's done so many things outside of the sport of basketball, but that was pretty much the genesis to, catapult him to this next level. So we're going to have a unique presentation tomorrow.
And so you're going to be the presenter?
Yes, I'll be the presenter.
What?
And we're going to have a few other people as well.
Okay.
It's not just all about me.
Okay.
I'm just pretty much the messenger.
Okay.
And so my job is to execute the message, but we'll have some dancers there as well. We'll have some people who are artists that are known nationally that are going to be here downtown at the Dreamland Ballroom. I'll be remiss if I didn't mention it was at the Dreamland Ballroom.
At what time?
The Dreamland Ballroom is going to be, the time is going to be, the doors open at 5:45, but the event starts at 6:30, okay? But we want people to get there at 5:45 to take a tour of this historic building. This historic building has been down there for over 100 years off of 9th Street, the corridor of 9th Street. Of course, we all know the history behind that, but it's been revitalized by the McCoy family, Carrie and her husband, and of course her sons. We were on TV earlier, and we were talking about that mechanism that they have in place when it comes to the Dreamland, the Arkansas Flag and Banner building that's still open today. So it'll be a great opportunity tomorrow for you to come by as well and check it out.
Yeah, I'm planning to be there.
Yes.
And what inspires you to do this? And I've been looking at your website, so you highlight these legends and you learn from them. What inspired you to do events similar to this one and your other programs? Because, I mean, you are the historian. But why do you think it's important to take a legend who passed and then study them and pass on the information? Like, why do you think it's important? And what inspired you to do the event like tomorrow?
The event tomorrow is a part of a larger series called Unburied Truths. So for those watching, hashtag Unburied Truth. Again, hashtag Unburied Truth. Now that's a series that we have a partnership with the Dreamland Ballroom, the Arkansas Flag and Banner. And the last Unburied Truth was on Dr. King. We all know he's been dead for over 50 years. But again, for this Unburied Truth, we dig up the truth that people don't normally talk about, or more normal people are not exposed to. And that's where I come into play. My job is to find information that most people generally can't find or don't find, and talk about it, not to sugarcoat anything, but to make it relevant to today's society here in America, and to learn from the past. Definitely, we don't want to repeat the same mistakes we've made as a society, as a nation, as a community from 50 years ago. Now, in the case of Mr. Bryant, he gave us a blueprint, a business blueprint, a philanthropic blueprint. He gave us a dad blueprint, you know, hashtag girl dad. You know, he gave us a husband blueprint. We all know he made some mistakes, just like a lot of people, just like us, we make mistakes, but definitely this was a major comeback, you know, from what happened. And so, again, a blueprint for success. A lot of people don't realize that his dad, Joe Jellybean Bryant, gave him that will, if you will, you know, 40 years ago almost. And so he just patented to call it the Mamba mentality after that situation he went through with the courts and with his family. And so, again, another blueprint for success after you have a demise of sorts. And so this was pretty much a comeback, if you will. So a plan, a blueprint strategy for that as well. So to the audience, you know, it's not just about having blueprints for comebacks. It's about giving and being an ambassador of goodwill, and also being involved, civically engaged, to be a part of the electoral process, the democratic process. Also to be a mentor. You know, when you look at some of the things that Kobe has done that we're going to talk about with the Unburied Truth, you don't generally see people talk too much about that. And so it's going to be unique in that sense. And as a historian, as a social historian, that's what we're going to be doing tomorrow. And so this is how we want you to come on out.
Yeah. And I know it's going to be very surprising to you, but before Kobe's death, I've never heard of him. I mean, I listened to him on like a YouTube video, just like a sound, but I couldn't connect the dots. And then I saw him on Ellen's show, but I knew nothing about him. He was just a guest, you know. And then once he passed and the whole nation was mourning, I'm like, who is this guy?
Right.
And because I've been in America for 11 years, and I'm not a sports fan, and I was like, I had no idea who he was. And so tomorrow is going to be so educational for many people who may not have followed a basketball player, you know, because he was more than a basketball player, from what I understand.
He was, and you have to think about it, and again to the audience, I'm a Generation Xer. My son is a millennial, and people that come after him are Generation Z. But to say all that, I remember 36 years ago when the late, great Marvin Gaye passed away. It was 1984. I remember coming home from school, and my mother was in tears, heavy, in the living room. I'm like, Mom, what's going on? Why are you crying? And she was like, Marvin Gaye died. And so I remember exactly where I was 36 years ago when that happened. Just like many of you know exactly where you were when Kobe Bryant, you know, and his daughter and the other 7 people of Team Mamba, when they all lost their lives in that fiery crash. And so I was at Kroger parking lot. My wife got out to run into the store. I was mentoring one of my students from last year over the phone from another state. We were having a conversation, and so we were conversing about some things that he was going through. And then I got a post about, you know, Kobe Bryant. I said, this must be some bogus news.
Yeah. And
I said, I'm going to remiss it. So then it came up again on CNN. I had to go ahead and tell my student, time out, let me call you back. That's how serious it was for me, because I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I was born and raised in West Philly. And of course, Kobe is a Philadelphian by birth. Of course, he had his international experience traveling overseas with his dad and his mother. And so that's what makes him so unique. Not really better or worse, but just different. We all have a stamp of approval, or just like our fingerprints. We all have different fingerprints. And one of Kobe's fingerprints is that he spoke 4 or 5 languages and didn't go to college. And so how many people you know can speak 4 or 5 languages, generally speaking, and didn't have a college education per se 25 years ago, 24 years ago? And so we're going to analyze those spectrums. And I'm known to build bridges between cultures and people with different ethnic backgrounds, people with different linguistic backgrounds, because I speak 4 languages myself. And so it's unique for us to have that conversation. And so hopefully with the time frame given, we'll be able to do that tomorrow. And I believe it was destined to impact people's hearts and to embrace the idea of diversity. Not just ethnic diversity, but intellectual diversity, fiscal diversity, diversifying your portfolio, That's what Kobe Bryant was all about. And again, I'll be remiss if I didn't mention this. You have a guy here, 41 years old, Kobe was, and he's known on every continent. I saw somewhere recently where there's a statue in China of Kobe Bryant. This is with the number 24. So that goes to show you it was over the last 10 years. And so, again, here you have a guy whose daughter, God rest her soul, Gianna, she spoke Mandarin, a Chinese language variant. And so, again, how many 13-year-olds in America speak Mandarin, and she's a Latino American, of course, African American, Latino American, so of mixed ancestry. And so, again, that diversity is beautiful. That's what makes this country so great, And so, and look at us, You got diversity right here, intellectual diversity from different countries, linguistically speaking. But again, that's what makes it so unique. It'll be great.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's going to be great, and I think if we're picking up this story and this legend and willing to talk about it and educate us more about it so we can learn. Now, I know you kind of already said that, but I want to ask you that again, I guess to sum it up. Why do you think it's important to learn history at all, and in schools and as we go on in our lives, and always pay attention to what's going on? And I want to hear that probably again, because you kind of already said it, but to summarize shortly from the expert historian opinion, why is it important to know history?
Yes, it's important to know where you come from, or where we come from as a nation, as a people, ethnically, also culturally, because again, just because we're ethnically the same doesn't mean we have the same culture. Our culture is a way of life. And how do we examine ways of life? We have to study people. And when you study people to get a chance to know them, hopefully you want to magnify all the good things and learn from some of the things that are not too pleasant. But again, that's what history is. We're storytellers. We kind of go back in time and we review things. Of course, you want things that are peer-reviewed, peer-edited, and you want to look at things that are not, quote, fake, if you will. And so you want to have credible sources. And to go back and to think about what happened here in Arkansas, when Arkansas became a state, when Little Rock became the state capital, I believe Arkansas became a state in 1836. I could be wrong. But again, to my historians listening to me, find out, Google that, and send us a message here. But going back and looking at what happened for Arkansas to become a state, for it to become a territory, for it to become annexed here in the city, Little Rock to be the state capital, you have to go back and review the process, how it happened, who was involved. All that's history. Now, from a personal standpoint, I try to make it attractive, because I believe attention spans here and there are different. There are variations with attention spans. But I can tell you this, if it's attractive to your mind and to your heart, you'll listen. I don't care how long it is, you'll keep listening. And you'll go back for more. Yeah. And so that's what my job is, to make it attractive, to make it connect those dots. Now,
because you see the value.
You see the value. Yeah. You recognize the value, and you want to see, not just from an exclusivity standpoint, but how's it relevant? So we have to make it relevant. So again, as a bridge builder, as a connector, that's my job, to try to connect the dots between different cultures, different linguistic barriers, different nationalities, different colors, hairstyles. In this case, when you're talking about 1980 versus 2020, That was 40 years ago, 1980, I believe. And so I generally remember 1980. It shows my age, but at the same time, you know, we live in a different time now. But going back and reviewing what was on the records for speeding tickets, going back and looking at what was on the record for smoking, and just to give our viewers an analogy about what we're talking about here, go back to when JFK was assassinated. Look at all those YouTube videos. Remember, when you go back, that's a historical item. You're taking moves, you're going back. Look at the courtrooms of the 1960s, early to mid 1960s. Look at the courtroom scenes. Everybody is smoking cigarettes. So of course we all know in 1989, 31 years ago, George Herbert Walker Bush, okay, made it illegal to smoke in buildings. So again, how do we know this? You have to go back and look at the history and look at the laws that were enacted. Of course, George Herbert Walker Bush also had acts in place for people who are at a disadvantage physically with regard to for wheelchairs and things like that. So again, you have to go back and look at what's on the books from 1989, and he was president from 88 to 92 until Arkansas's Bill Clinton made him a one-term president. So again, going back in history and analyzing and cross-analyzing, interviewing people, picking their brain, I love it, you know? So again, that's the unique thing about being a historian. It has to be something in here. It's not really in essence for the money, but at the same time, the gift that I have, the gift that God has given me, I believe, you want to use it to bless other people, not really to bless yourself. And so sometimes you get the satisfaction in doing that. Of course, Scripture always speaks to, you know, for you to, your gifts will make way for you. And so with this gift that you have and with this gift that I have, you know, we're making ways for you all to watch. Okay, so we think it's unique from that aspect.
Thank you. You must read a lot.
Yeah, I'm a bookworm, you know.
Yeah.
If between, well, working out, used to work out and reading, and just, I love data and I love proving and also disproving sometimes, you know. And that's where Unburied Truth comes in with the Tamborian Hall with the Dreamland Ballroom, Arkansas Flag and Banner Building. And we're so grateful for that partnership because they have given us an opportunity to have these sessions 4 times a year. And so this one, of course, with Kobe and the other 8 people, his daughter included, this was not planned until, you know, we saw the news on that. So by me being from Philly, I remember seeing when he was 16 years old. And so I said, hey, you know, we had a mutual friend, so let's go ahead and take advantage of that and, you know, expose people to what they don't generally hear about Mr. Bryant.
It's amazing. And this is just for me because I like to research, and Wikipedia, as much as we love it, it is not 100% credible source. If I want to learn history, I know you mentioned Google and YouTube, but what websites out there you would recommend for those who want to learn history of any time?
Mm-hmm.
Like what websites are the most credible in your professor's opinion?
Sure. The History Channel is pretty credible.
Okay.
Generally speaking, the History Channel, National Geographic hadn't done a bad job with certain historical items that they talk about and expose people to.
Okay.
Also, I would refer to mostly peer-reviewed journals about different items. You know,
What is it, mostly peer review?
your peer review, that's where other historians, other scholars, other authors, other people in their various disciplines go to peer-reviewed journals if they're published or if they're in academia and higher education. You know, that's credible. You can always make a phone call and reach out to a history department to see who wrote something.
Library, yeah.
Exactly, or the LOC, Library of Congress, what they produce. And as long as you can reach out to an educational entity, I think that's a good stepping stone moving forward. I always advocate for my students not to, you know, use Wikipedia because anybody can write, you know, Wikipedia, and it changes up so frequently. Now, for a quick fix, yeah, we can do that, you know. But for some credible, scholastic, competent work, definitely those peer-reviewed journals, articles, doing research by primary sources, also by secondary sources. But again, get back to your question to the links. History Channel is a good one. And the Encyclopedia Britannica, those links are pretty reasonable. LOC, Library of Congress, when I've done my research on my first book, that's where I actually had a chance to travel to.
And sorry you guys, it's a little lengthy video because it's just such an interesting topic to me, and I think of sharing. We're almost done. I want to ask a couple more questions. And so I don't really know how old you are, you know, tell us, but like in your lifetime, and based on all your historical knowledge, what, and it's such a broad question, but if like maybe one or two changes that you would like to see in your lifetime, you want to maybe contribute to that change based on the past. And I'm sure there's so many issues that you're passionate about, I'm sure. And what are the, for example, one or two issues that you really see the change must be done, whether it is, as you say, diversity, or I don't know, racial relationship, whatever the case may be. What issues are you most passionate about and want to see changing in your lifetime, and how would you encourage people to contribute to that change, if it makes sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, the first part about change that I want to see, prayerfully and hopefully in my lifetime, would be equal access to information. That's part of the first part. So equal access to resources. When I mean resources, we're talking about business loans. We're talking about addressing food deserts. Little Rock is one of the mid-sized American cities that have food deserts in our city makeup, and so obviously that contributes to a lot of physical and psychological concerns. So of course equality all the way around with regard to that. Also it seems like it doesn't seem, I know there's an onslaught on African American males as it relates to different things that we just noted. It seems like there's a lot of markers in place, and
you want it to change.
Always, yeah, exactly. Always being a target at something. As a man of minority color, being African American in this country, we have to address that. And of course, there's something that's coming down the pike called the Derek Olivier Research Institute for Black-on-Black violent crime. And so we want to help talk about and collect data on the issues regarding Black-on-Black violent crime. Now, we all know crime is pretty much the byproduct of the real problem, okay? And so the real problem is not guns, it's the mentality, and of course how the system is set up to where you have a guy who has a job as a security officer and was pretty much, from a business standpoint, ordained to carry and went through all the loopholes legally to have federal credentials to carry weapons, and he's stopped by law enforcement, and it seems like they still arrest him for having a certain kind of bullets that his job gave him. And so this is the Second Amendment issue, but it seems like when we look at the larger scope, if African Americans are just under 14% of the population here, with 330 million people in this country, that's about 45 million people. Now, of course, half of that 13.5 is men, half is women. So there's about 6 million African American adult males in this country. About 20 million African American adult males in this country. And you cut that number in half because everybody's not grown. So when you look at it from that standpoint, it goes down to about a certain small percentage. So in my lifetime, or in my grandson's lifetime, I would like to see that being addressed primarily. Now when it comes to a lack of job opportunities, it seems like when people who look like me are stopped by law enforcement, it doesn't always go right. And of course, people who know me know that I have the responsibility presentation series where we train young people of all colors, of all ethnic backgrounds, but in particular, African American males and Hispanic American males, how to respond responsibly to law enforcement. And so it gives the margin of error to be real small. That window shrinks when you take this course, when you take the program, when you have listened to the presentation. So one of the things that I like to see is that we're not always easily killed or easily locked up. Now, sometimes in certain issues, we are the perpetrators. I don't like it. That's the truth. But in a lot of cases, we're criminalized for having hair. As you can see, I don't have any hair, But my son has a lot of hair. My son's hair is down here. And there's a number of schools in place that are suspending men who look like me, little boys, adolescent adult males, for having hair.
Sorry, I'm not from this country, and
yes.
I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it.
It's public domain information, and if it's not hair, and I don't agree with the whole sagging, but of course it's a crime, it's a criminal, element to have your pants sagging down. If it's a criminal element to have your pants sagging down, it should be a criminal element to have your belly button showing. But of course it goes back to skin color and your ethnic background. Of course, with your hair, it's a criminal. Or it could be egregious. It's an offense. Young men are getting suspended. They're getting sent home. Student athletes are asked to cut their hair before wrestling matches, and it seems like they're all my color. So it's obvious there's some types of illegal assaults on African American males. Any way you look at it. So definitely in my lifetime, to answer your question, I definitely want to see that being addressed and to have it countered in a positive, healthy, respectful decorum.
Yeah, and what can community do? Like, if you tell the people who are watching, what should they do to address these issues? And I know you mentioned so many, but what should they do? I mean, frankly, just be kinder. What would you say?
It's always wise to, when you want to address something, to first have a rapport, a dialogue, and to exchange information, and to write things down. And of course, I can't speak on behalf of women, but on behalf of men, to make good eye contact. Your body language always needs to be competent, but to have that conversation, to learn people. And of course, when you learn people, whether it's differences or things that you can agree on, let's magnify the things that we have in common instead of making things bigger that we disagree on or things that are different. And so again, as a historian, I'll go ahead and be transparent about this. We've seen, especially the last couple of years, it's been more vocal, but it's been around even before the last 3 or 4 years. It's been festering, I would say, the last generation or so, about differences with regard to not just color, but also gender, of course, with women, and how there's still no equal playing field. There was a recent study that was taken, and this will tie to what you're saying. There's a recent study that was taken in England for young men, young boys, and how 70% of young men think that women are not equal, and they're giving a thumbs up to that. And that's toxic environment from day one when you grow up thinking like that. And so, of course, in this country, I'm not sure what the numbers are, but this is in England, our mother country. And so, of course, it's unique to be able to say that. Definitely don't agree with that, but again, it's unique and we have to address that. Now, as far as what we're talking about here, you can use that same pattern and say, okay, how do we solve issues? Let's first, obviously, you need to have research in place, credible, factual research in place, and to have that dialogue, that conversation. And again, if you want something that's honest, when you're looking at these numbers, whether it's in education, whether it's in medicine, whether it's in law enforcement, those 3 areas, okay, I'll say it again, education, law enforcement, and medicine. Those 3 areas, okay, dictate a whole lot and collect a whole lot of data as it relates to not just African Americans, not just women, but Americans in general. And so I say that because when you look at teachers, 77% of teachers in this country are European American or Caucasian women. And so there's nothing wrong with that. But again, we need to have more diversity, get back to diversity in that realm. For some reason, African American males, I think it's at 2-point-something% of teachers in this country. Of course, law enforcement. When we're talking about law enforcement, you got some outstanding officers out there. My brother's a retired law enforcement officer. I work with law enforcement officers. I appreciate what they do. At the same time, we know that a large percentage of them have been compromised. And so, of course, but when you look at those numbers, over 75% of them are Caucasian American males. Okay, so again, we have to change that paradigm shift. How can we get more minorities, more women involved with law enforcement? So again, the other third element we talked about was medicine. When you're looking at medicine, only 2% of doctors in this country, medical professionals, are African Americans, African American males rather. And so what that lack, with that serious deficit, you know, and looking at the prison population, when you look at those numbers of persons that are incarcerated, you know, we're 6% of the population, but we're 45% to 50% of the prison population. That's another marker that we have to address. And so, you know, and they're addressing it now, some states, with decriminalizing nonviolent offenses. If you got a guy that's smoking marijuana and he's selling it, those are two negatives, those are two bad things. He's nonviolent, but he gets a felony on his record, and he has to sit in jail for 5 years for smoking marijuana. But now, up and down the university, you see signs, you see big signs of people that have marijuana factories here that are making lucrative money out of it now. But of course, there's a lot of men that look like me that are incarcerated from that same thing. You know, so you just change the law up, and you see the prison spectrum. And so again, it's quite bothersome to get your attention when you see that people are making a lot of money off of doing something that was illegal for a few generations, that have incarcerated people, all colors, but especially in particular African American males and other Hispanic American males, Native American males. And so when you talk about things like that, you know, that whole systemic racism, if you will, or I don't really like to use the word racism, I call it ethnicism, because we're all one race, we're the human race, you know. I won't go back and talk like they talked in the 50s and the 40s, you know. This is 21st century right here. So again, ethnically speaking, we're different. Nationally speaking, you know, we're American if you live in this country. Even if you're not from this country, you still live here longer than 30 days, but I digress. So again, having that conversation and honestly speaking about it, you know, giving your input and seeking ways where we can collaborate and enhance the quality of life. That's what it should be about. Because this country is so great, it's because of our differences. You know, it's not because of putting up a wall and, you know, that's, try that in 1985. Ronald Reagan wasn't having that back then. So again, we all know people want to come here for obvious reasons, you know. But again, most people that come here don't come here under the premise of doing something illegal. You know, you have your numbers that are small. They're the minority of that majority. So, you know, we could talk about that all for a long time. And so, but those are the things that, you know, we like to talk about under the Unburied Truth series as well.
That's amazing. And I want you guys to see, and I haven't talked about this in my motivational speaking, but I will eventually. But from what you're saying, if you look at some of the legends who've done the most in the world, like Kobe, minority, Oprah, minority, Ellen DeGeneres, minority, Wendy Williams, minority, Barack Obama, minority. So I know that the present may dictate you that you cannot be who you want to be and you're bound to just have a basic life and go to prison. But what if you believe different? And with history, we have seen that, I mean, if I'm an immigrant, and hopefully, by example, you guys can get inspired that it doesn't really matter where you're from or how you look like. What matters is how much you believe in yourself, how hard you work. It's going to be harder if you're a minority, let me tell you that. But don't let that stop you. And hopefully, if you change the way you think, and I love, like in history, we just had Black History Month, and I've learned about Black History Month that the reason it's so important is that if you celebrate the history, you can give the confidence to the young people to grow up and do great things in the world. And what you're doing is so important because you're shaping the minds to celebrate the legends. And then the young people, when they come and hear that, they're gonna be like, wow, if Kobe did that, I did that. If Mr. Edmund did that, I can do it. And you inspire people with history, and you do the work for us because you know you're the one who read and give us the icing on the cake. I think what you're doing is so important, and I can tell that this is your calling. And we were just talking earlier. I bet you have birthed so many amazing leaders that came through your classroom or through your personal mentoring and through your attendees at your events. Don't stop. You guys, fingers crossed, you're going to be one of my speakers. I never make it certain until the flyer comes out, so let the flyer come out. You guys, it's going to come out after March 19th, and hopefully you're going to be one of my speakers. And I want to thank you for what you do. And I want to thank you for choosing this career path, because it is not easy. As you say, it may not be super financially rewarded, but hopefully it's rewarded for you in a different way, because you are helping shape the history, remember the history, learn from history, and build up the minds, and make a difference, like you're making the difference. And I just learned from Tony Robbins that you may not see the seeds that you're planting and the fruits of your labor. You may not even see the fruits of your labor in your lifetime, but you know that you planted a seed in so many minds, and eventually those people who came through your lifetime, who you interacted, they're gonna come to the world to make a difference. And I just thank you for doing it. You're exceptional, you're amazing, you guys. Sorry for the long video, but every word that you said was so important. So you guys pay attention to the historian, Mr. Edmonds. And where can we find you?
Sure. Follow me on my website. My website is www.edmondwdavis.com. That's www.edmondwdavis.com. Or you can follow me at EDDavisW. Again, follow me at EDWDavis, of course. But I want to thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity and for the event that's tomorrow.
Yeah, we're gonna come, we're gonna have a good time, we're gonna learn. I'm gonna take notes. I take notes. Can I take notes?
Yes, take
I
notes.
always take notes.
Bridge, build, come meet people. You can let your hair down at this event, or you can ask questions. And so we're going to have a community announcement section as well. And there's going to be some surprises down there as well tomorrow night. So God willing, we all make it down there in about 24 hours or so and have a good time learning, building, loving, and sharing information to help enhance the quality of life. That's what it's all about. Yep.
Can I shake your hand?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Peace.